This is LXBN TV, and I'm Colin O'Keefe. Crowdfunding is an extremely popular subject as of late, especially with the signing of the Jobs Act by President Obama. To discuss whether or not it's truly worth the hype, we bring in James Saksa of Fox Rothschild and the Securities Compliance Sentinel. James, for those who don't know, I mean, it's a pretty popular subject, but, in basic terms, what is crowdfunding and where did all the hype come from? I mean, is it just Kickstarter or where did all this hype come from?
Kickstarter is a good way of approaching it. Kickstarter, which exists right now, is a crowdfunding platform. Crowdfunding, as we're going to talk about it, is going to be slightly different. Kickstarter, on there, you would go and pledge an amount of money to an art project or a band or something. And they're going to have some sort of project like recording an album. And in return for that, as a pledger, you get to get like a free copy of their LP. The way crowdfunding under the Jobs Act will work is going to be kind of the same idea, except replace band with a startup company and free LP with shares of stock. And the idea is that if it does really well, you'll get to share in the profits and enjoy that. And then if not, you're going to be SOL. It's going to be like any other investment. In terms of, you said, where the hype come from, I think it's because, unlike most other things that happen in the Jobs Act, this is a social networking, type thing. And that's just a buzzword that's going to have a lot of bloggers and media, all of Twitter about, because it makes them think of Twitter and Facebook and things like that.
Yeah, it was funny. I was reading, and this will seg into the next question in terms of who's going to use it, but the social component's so big because, as you mentioned, it's very, very helpful for people, you said, to be frank, people who might be a little bit more socially uncomfortable, who need funding for their projects. But now that we're going to have formalized laws in regards to crowdfunding, with the Jobs Act, what type of people and companies do you see turning to crowdfunding, and who do you see not turning to crowdfunding?
Well, I think in order to answer that, we have to understand what crowdfunding or the Jobs Act is going to look like. It's going to be limited. If you want to crowdfund, which means you'll be able to raise money from almost an unlimited amount of people without it ever triggering the 12G registration requirements. Right now, well, after, soon enough, I should say, that will mean if you have over 2,000 shareholders, essentially, you'll have to become public. With crowdfunding, that's not the case. So you can raise a lot of money by getting a little bit from everyone. That said, crowdfunding is limited to $1 million, which really isn't a lot for in the eyes of a lot of companies. So who's going to use it? Basically, the way I see it is that this is going to be useful for companies that are struggling for startups that are struggling at their so-called friends and family stage or their angel investor stage. Most companies, when they start, it requires getting, your dad or your cousin to give you a couple $1,000s to really get going. If you don't have access to those sort of pockets in your immediate circle, crowdfunding might be the way you're going to want to go to get to get going. It'll also probably help democratize the geography of startups. Right now, a lot of startups feel that they need to be, especially tech startups, in Silicon Valley or Boston or New York. Here, and that's because that's where all the angel investors and venture capitalists are. Here, you'll be able to get a start, in theory, even if you're in, the middle of Kansas. You'll be able to recruit individuals. There'll also be other considerations that some companies might want to use. Like, if you're selling a product, it might make sense to create a very large base of individuals that are literally invested in your success, and thus you have a built-in market right then and there. But for the most part, who's not going to use this are the companies, the startups right now. The startups that are out there now that already are going, that are trying to attract higher level venture capitalists or that are looking to expand in other more traditional ways, they're not going to have a need to do this. Especially if they already have like a revenue stream they can go to the bank or they can go find someone that will either loan them money or invest with them. They won't need to resort to crowdfunding.
Yeah, it's for a very select group of people, and as you wrote about, it seems it's for the very early stages of funding. So finally, how big do you see crowdfunding being in the coming years? Is it ultimately worth all the hype that there seems to be around it right now?
I think right now, especially as I read about it, a lot of people have read, a description of it, and that's about it. I don't think a lot of people have actually sat down and read the act yet, and especially haven't read how often the act directs the Securities and Exchange Commission to pass additional rules and regulations to govern how crowdfunding is going to work. And I especially don't think, in light of those two, that they've read that Mary Shapiro, the chairwoman of the SEC, and a couple of other securities bigwigs out there really don't like it because they feel that there's a huge potential for fraud. I personally think that potential for fraud is overblown as well, because there are a lot of easier ways to sucker someone out of money that don't involve having to get a CPA to look at your books or register with the SEC.
Yeah.
Probably I don't advise criminals, but I definitely not advise someone to register with the feds before they try to commit a crime.
Yeah.
But especially when the upside's only $1 million.
Yeah.
So I think as people start settling down, and something else I have to add, this pet law did just pass recently. It's directed the SEC to pass rules. It gives them 270 days as a deadline. The SEC is already swamped. They're not going to make that deadline. You're not going to see this probably happen for at least a year. And even then, it's going to be really up in the air and kind of open. There are also a number of steps that need to happen before this can really work. Regulatory steps, I should say. And because of that, I think it's going to be delayed longer than a lot of people who are already hyped up about it will see. That all said, I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be great for a lot of really small entrepreneurs to get their small businesses off the ground. The fact that people are saying, like, this will help, the next Facebook, next Google. No. Facebook and Google didn't need crowdfunding. It's kind of obvious. And the next one won't as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to watch to see who this impacts. I mean, when you look at, though it's not the same, the types of projects on Kickstarter, the types of projects like this, and you wrote about this as well, it may be, restaurants and or food trucks, things that may be really, really high risk without the, high return. So it's going to be interesting to watch to see what happens. I don't know if it's going to save the American economy, but it's going to be interesting to watch regardless.
Yeah, it'll be a fun development for all of us security law nerds out there.
Definitely, definitely. Well, once again, that was James Saksa of Fox Rothschild and the Securities Compliance Sentinel. For more on this story, James got a great series on the Jobs Act, on crowdfunding. Be sure to check that out. It's at securitiescompliancesentinel.foxrothschild.com. And, of course, we have tons of content on the Jobs Act and crowdfunding at LXPN, which is at lxpn.lexblog.com. Thanks, James.
Thank you.